Oh, hi there. Hi guys, it's Jason with Ad Hortus. Today I just need to do a couple of repots. I might as well, show you guys what I do when I repot certain things. And yeah, let's just get started. Before anything, I typically focus on safety first. Not a lot of my stuff, actually none of the things I'm working with today are pokey, but it's just really good to have a pair of gloves on you. It doesn't matter how fancy you want to go with it. But having a pair of gloves with you just makes sure that, especially sometimes with if you're using certain mixes, they can get a little splintery, so just be safe with it. So I have a nice pair of gloves here. They have that latex lining on the front side, the fabric on the back, so just pretty standard issue stuff. And then for me, one of my personal favorites is a little collapsible stool. I'm not a fan of just squatting and putting all that weight on my legs, and so I have a little stool here, and so I'm just gonna take a little seat here and get started. Okay, so don't mind the cord. You'll see that there's a little cord down here. We're just using a corded mic at the moment, and so that's just gonna be hanging out with us today. Okay. The first thing here, I have a selection of stuff that I'm going to be repotting today. I'll run through it. So starting from the right side there, I have Pilea peperomoides, a really nice one. I'll do a little focus as we repot them. The next one is Peperomia watermelon. I have a little 2-inch string of hearts right there. Calathea or Calathea, white fusion, a really nice one in my collection. I have 2 string of dolphins here, which I'm actually going to be putting them together in the same planter. I'm going to turn them into a nice hanging basket, and so that'll be really interesting. Another thing too, I have a variegated Monstera. This is actually my Thai Constellation. I'll get into more detail with this as I do like a rare plants video. One of my personal favorites, really nice. I actually got it a couple months ago, so it's still fairly new in my collection, but I absolutely love it, all the nice splashes of patterns there. I have Adenium Black Dragon, really killer looking flower there, but you can see the caudex is getting nice and big, and so, I want to make sure I give it a nice new home before the new season starts. And then last of all, I have a red hibiscus. Now this isn't just your regular old Chinese hibiscus. This is a cultivar called Firecracker, and it produces a really, really beautiful flower. I'm really fond of it. I can attach a photo here somewhere on the screen. But yeah, I love the flower. It has that nice two-tone richness to it that you just can't beat. And so this is more so just for my personal collection out there in the yard kind of thing. But I'm gonna repot it first. I don't have, I don't want to commit it to any spot yet, so I'm just gonna repot it, give it a chance to bulk out. Okay, we got here. This is Pilea peperomoides. Really nice, beautiful plant in that house plant world. Right there, really nice. People categorize it many different ways. Some people say it's more succulent-y, other people say it's more in the route of like peperomia, so it's kind of that ground cover type plant. However you categorize it, I think it's a really gorgeous plant, to have in the home. I actually have mine by the windowsill, and so it gets just probably an hour of western exposure at the end of the day, like sunset kind of thing. And for the most part, it just looks pretty cool. But I'm gonna go ahead and do this repotting now. So the way that I like to go about it is you wanna make sure that when you're upsizing, you pick up about maybe an inch or two in terms of pot size. 2 inches is kind of standard, but some people like to go on that half size because they can't afford to go to that bigger size, like space-wise. And I get it, people are living in apartments, more urban areas, but when you upsize, 2 inches is pretty standard. You can go way bigger. It's just you have to be really careful about over potting because that will make a very difficult time, because the new soil will start to try to pull away moisture from your plant, giving you a little bit of trouble there. So what we have here, this guy is going to be a 4-inch pot. So this is what it is currently now. What I'm typically shooting for, I'm gonna set these 5 gallons back here. What you're typically shooting for is about a 6-inch pot. This here is a 6-inch, and so I really like this size because it's gonna be, this is another 6-inch different model. You can see same size. 6 inches is a really good size to go in because you still get that small, compact planting size root ball, but at the same time you're able to, you know, get a bigger size for your plant to root in. So here, actually, you know what? The gloves are off. Again, very safe, guys, but unfortunately I'm a little too used to it, but I wanted to make sure that for those of us that are more glove oriented, that's fine, but just not my cup of tea. Over here, so this is actually another 1 gallon that I'm gonna do one of the other pots. I'm gonna do a little bit of rearranging here. Okay, so this bin here is, I call it my little multi-purpose bin when I'm working with soils. I don't like to pour stuff straight from a bag. It tends to be fairly compacted, so I like to break it up a little bit. And oftentimes when I'm doing my own type of soil mix, I can use this to blend it myself. But you see here that it's just straight up, you know, pots. I have a couple of things in there I blew in from the windy day we had the other day. But, you know, you're breaking up, making sure that if there's any clumps in the bag. So this is this potting soil that I poured out a moment ago, plus some of my other mixes that I've actually had in here. So, but you can see, you know, nice, workable. It's not dry by any means. It's still very moist, but just not wet. I'll give everything a nice final water, and we'll do a shot on that. Okay, so if you bring it in close here, I'm gonna go ahead and slip my pilea out. There's some lava rocks in there. I'm gonna put that into the mix here. Okay. Okay. You can see my root ball here is a little, you know, root bound. It's quite tight. Still spongy, so there's still plenty of room for it to grow. So we're at a really good stage where this baby's ready to go to its next size. Before I do the repotting, I tend to inspect the plant to see if everything's looking okay. You know, I'm fairly OCD, so I try to not go too crazy with plucking and pruning and stuff. But like, you know, keep an eye out for stuff that's like semi-chlorotic like this. You know, it'll give you a sign as to what's up with your plant. Okay, so I have this here. I'm gonna put this guy here for a second. First step is I'm gonna go ahead and get the soil. You wanna give yourself enough soil where you're coming up about maybe half or 2/3 of the way. And then what I like to do is I will take the original plant with the container on it, the old container, and actually press it down into the new soil. And the reason why we're working with moist soil and not wet soil, well, first is because it'll save you the mess, but when you work with moist soil, it keeps its form, at least for a little bit. That allows you to see here. So if you were to stick this root ball in here, you'll see exactly where the soil line will be. So now that this is here, I'm pretty happy with it. You can drop the soil level down just a bit too if you like. So what I'll do is I'll just shake out just a bit there, level my soil out again, kind of fluff it back up. Okay, and I'll push it right down again. What you're shooting for is the top of the root ball to be about 1/2 inch from the top in smaller sizes. And if it's in a bigger pot, then about 1 inch. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my pilea out of that. We're gonna set it in there right in the exact slot that we did using this as a mold. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this guy aside. Okay, and so now we're gonna go ahead and grab our soil, and we're gonna backfill on the sides. So the way that I do it, I'll go ahead and grab a nice handful here, and I will slightly tilt the root ball away from where I'm depositing the soil. It'll help me give a little bit more clearance as when I'm bringing my arm under. When you're working with more fragile ones like pilea that just break here and there, that helps you get a little bit more clearance. But at the same time, what happens is that now I'm gonna go ahead and fill in the other side. I just will pull that root ball back towards the other direction, and you'll see that now everything's gonna sit a lot more nice and snug, and it'll look really aggressive how I'm handling it. You're gonna be just fine as long as you're not like truly crushing the root ball, which not many of people will do. You know, make sure there's no air pockets. That can be very dangerous for plants because as the air pockets in the pot touch the roots, it'll actually kill them. That's what air pruning is, in theory, is. But for most people's purposes, you don't want that happening. And there we go. Nice pilea. It actually looks more natural in a 6-inch pot now. Didn't look so like overdone prior. I'm gonna go ahead and just readjust this really quick. There we go. But yeah, all set and good for the shelf again. I'm gonna go ahead and set this aside and we'll move on to the next thing. All right, next up, Peperomia watermelon. A really nice specimen. Actually, the one that I got produces these really long stems. I know a lot of people have like really dense ones and lower, more fluffier looking ones. It just happened that the one that came into my life produces these really long strands here. This is actually from Monterey Bay Nursery. Really high quality plants that come out of that place, but just the one that came out of here, I love it. How wispy and stuff when if the right breeze comes through, it actually moves. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do that repot. So, just like the Pilea peperomoides, let me just peel some stickers off. Last thing we want is mislabeled plants. Put that aside. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and grab our soil. About a little bit less there. About halfway up. And we're gonna go ahead and press this thing down. Looks like it's gonna sit a little high, so we're gonna take more out. Okay. Sit that in there, perfect. Okay, so make sure any kind of name tag you leave aside for right now. And the way that I pick up the plants is I will hold them right here by the crown. I'll be very gentle with it. Some have weaker root systems, you don't wanna break anything. You can try to push up from the bottom, and if you see that it's starting to give, I'll bring it in closer here. You'll see that I'm pushing from the bottom and it does give. So that's a good sign. So I'll hold it, and then I can go ahead and just kind of do a little tap. There we go. A little tappy tap there. And you'll see that this root ball is here. You can see root density is pretty there. I mean, it's looking pretty full up there. So we're gonna go ahead, pop this guy right down into the pot. And then same procedure, use the soil you have spilled all over the place first before grab it to anything else. Okay, and we're gonna go ahead and do our backfilling. So I pull it in one direction, do a 180, and then grab that root ball in the other direction. There we are. Start filling it in, use your thumb. And what I like to do is I will just bring it around like this, help make everything nice and level. Okay, and in a simple couple seconds there, we got ourselves a nice sturdy repot. There we go. We take our name tag, we stick it right there in the pot. Oh, I think this thing has a lip on it. There we go. A little bit further down. And we're all set. That's a nice repot there. See nice beautiful foliage on it, beautiful kind of watermelon, if you will. But yeah, it's really nice. And so we're moving on. Next up, we have a string of hearts. This is a really nice one. I actually have some tiny zip ties that I used for it to climb on, but once it got long enough, it just stopped. It stopped wanting to be on the zip ties, and so I put those aside. But you can see this is a nice 2-inch plant. I'm actually gonna extend it out so you can actually see how long it is. Ever since I've gotten it, it's just been coiling since. But I'm gonna go ahead and detangle it here. And alrighty. Oops. There you go. Look at that. That was like nice and long there. I love those Instagram photos that are like super long, like probably like 4 or 5 feet long and stuff. So not anywhere near there yet, but we need a bigger root system to make it happen. So what I do, I'm gonna go ahead and just lay it flat on the ground right there. I'm intending to put it into a 4-inch pot right here. So that's gonna be our next size up. We're gonna get some 2 inches of width there for it. So we're gonna put our soil down. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna take this pot, give it a nice little press. Looks like it's gonna come out a little low, so right there's pretty good. Perfect. So with this guy, oh, getting caught in the cord. There we go. What I do is I try to search for that crown again. It looks like that little piece is trying to root there. That's really cool. Okay, and we're gonna give it a nice little. So harder when you're working with terracotta pots because you can't top them out so easily, but give it a chance, a little bit more of a. Okay, there we go. So I want to put this 2-inch away, right there. And we have our really beautiful string of hearts here. I'm gonna go ahead and set this in now. It looks like it's actually gonna be still a little bit low. Right there. Really nice in the center there. I'm gonna go ahead and backfill. Find where that little, there it is. Yeah, the goal is that we make sure that root system is nice and sturdy in there and the crown is still attached. There we go. And then I'm gonna go ahead, just wrap my excess kind of all around here. We'll do another thing about staking later on, another video, but for right now we're just working on repotting. And so there we are, nice string of hearts there. Looks a lot more natural now in its new container. And there we go, moving on. All right, next up we have Calathea or Calathea White Fusion. I don't know how people pronounce this. I know that I'm sure there's like literature out there about proper pronunciation, but I, for the life of me, just like to stick with, Calathea. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick with that. We got White Fusion here. I'll go ahead and put that tag down. Now, I know White Fusion has that reputation for being super difficult. It wants this, it wants that. It can't be too dry nor too wet. And so I've had mines for, I would say, over a month or two now. It hasn't really been fussy at all for me, so I can't complain. But I actually have mines in my humidity box. So actually, let's swing that camera around for just a second so everyone can see my humidity box. You can see that there. I'll get into details about that later, but that used to be my fish tank, with no fish in it. And so, we're gonna go ahead and get creative and turn that into something functional. We're rolling into winter fairly soon here in Southern California, and so, I wanna make sure all my truly sensitive tropicals get protected. Stuff like this would need to be in that box. Okay, so I'm taking a look here. I'm coming through, I'm plucking a couple of sad looking leaves underneath, but I'm looking here, it looks like we're still getting growth activity, so the box is definitely working. I'm gonna go ahead and put my pot there, make that little imprint, and let's tip this baby out. There we go. Look at that root system, nice and fine. We're bringing it in really close here. Those roots are probably the finest I've seen on a plant in a while. So super nice and delicate. So we're gonna be very careful to just keep everything together. I know that there's this thing out there where people are like, play with the roots, separate them out. Now you can only do that with certain plants, like with stronger root systems. I know like people will manipulate like orchids, for example. When they're repotting orchids, they just straight up manhandle them, and that's fine, but that depends on the plant. Calathea, for instance, is not one of those plants, and so I try to just keep it together. General, rule of thumb there for me is just leave the root system intact, because worst case scenario, if your mix is terrible and it doesn't want to root into your mix, at least it still has its original root ball to live in, undisturbed, at least until you catch the sign of that, and you can fix that. Okay, so go ahead and put around soil here. So like this guy here, I'm gonna repot him. He's gonna go back into the humidity box later after his watering. Okay. And you're always trying to make sure that your soil level is matching the soil level of the original pot set into the new pot. And there you go. Calathea White Fusion, done. We're gonna move on. But yeah, well, it looks great. But we're moving on to the next thing. We're gonna do the hibiscus next. So this is considerably larger. So in preparation for that, I've gone ahead and refilled my soil here. Now what this is just simple old potting soil. This is the Dr. Earth potting soil, nothing fancy. Just gonna go ahead and pour that in. I really like the potting soil from Dr. Earth. It smells really good. I know there's some that have like manures and stuff. I don't recall the contents of this one, but for me, I get fairly irritated, like skin irritation from mixes that are a little bit more aggressive on the manures, and so you know, this one's pretty nice for me. It's this one, the all-purpose potting soil. Pot of Gold is the name that they go by. You can find them at a lot of different retailers, garden center retailers. But yeah, really nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a little smooshing here. Looks good, soil level looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and stick my hand in here, grab it by the stem. All right, and look at that root development right there. This is definitely ready for a new home. We're gonna go ahead and lay this right down right here. And I will typically wipe down the top caking of the soil, just because I feed with Osmocote, and so there's the pellets that are sitting on the surface there. That allows me to work them down to where the root level is, and I can always put new Osmocote up top. Okay, so go ahead and put a couple handfuls on this side here. Go. Okay, making sure everything is nice and level. This is also a good time too to look at the orientation of your plant. If you see that it's a little crooked or something, you can correct it at the time of planting and get things to look really good. But you know, that is Hibiscus Firecracker right there, nice and repotted. Give it a little water, and you know, we're on to the next thing. So next we're doing the Adenium Black Dragon right here. Before we move on though, I wanted to mention, or at least talk about, you know, people using nursery cans or reusing pots that they currently have. I know there are run-ins with like Phytophthora and other fungal diseases. You can always sterilize them. You can use bleaches. You can use hot water. You can even use just soap and water and just scrub them down really good. All of my pots are, you know, cleaned through. This is actually not the pot with the hibiscus, so don't worry about that. All of mine have been cleaned and stuff, but you know, if you're gonna reuse pots, I find a magic in using nursery pots. I'm a grower at heart. I love using these, so I will sterilize them and clean them. But if you're into like the ceramics and stuff, just, you know, make sure they're clean, and you can definitely pot them up with much more pretty, you know, pieces of pottery for your yard or for your patio. Okay, so going with the Adenium here, I know it's flowering. People always say, don't repot while it's flowering, it will shock the plant. And I absolutely agree with that. However, because I am reaching later in the season, I don't want to wait until I get to the next blooming season to repot it, because that's really going to throw off my plant's presentation going into the next flowering season. So I'm going to do it now. So we got a really nice base of potting soil here. People say you can use a cactus mix. Again, I agree with that too. But, you know, I find this particular potting soil to be pretty good universally, and a little mix that I had in there earlier was very sandy. So I have a lot more sand in there, and so I can use that to my advantage. So I'm feeling this pot already, and you can see that little snap there. This pot is very, very dense, and it is ready for a new one. Look at that. Guys, here, I'll bring it close up. Look at all those roots. So imagine this getting even more dense going into the springtime. How much little time will I have to do this? So I'm gonna go ahead and stage it here. It does look a little high, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna get rid of a little bit of soil there. Drop it down. Much better. Okay. So. Okay. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and use my hand to kind of brush this down. Now, we're not playing with the roots. We're just kind of working the excess soil down here. I like to go down as far as maybe 1/4 of an inch at most. You want to be able to expose the caudex, you know, as much as you can, but not to the point where it's starting to show the new little veins or roots underneath there. So that's pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and tuck it here, making sure I keep that trunk nice and centered. Okay. So what I've done here, particularly with Adenium, I've gone ahead and just lowered that soil level just a little bit more on the original soil level, because the way that it was planted before this, there was still a layer of soil that it wasn't rooted into, and so it hid some of the caudex. I really like the shape, how when it grows there, it flares out and looks nice and chunky. The fun term I like to use. But I've gone ahead and, you know, dropped it down. You'll see that there is a little bit of yellowing, and that's just from the exfoliation from the soil being there, so it blocked the light. But now with it going back, it'll get some sun exposure, and that's gonna help green it right back out. But we're all set here. I'm gonna go ahead and set this aside there, right here. And we're gonna go ahead and move on to our hanging basket next. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a little bit of cleaning out here. And this is an 8-inch hanging basket. The reason why I'm going with an 8-inch and not a 6-inch, so these are my string of dolphins right here. Really beautiful. I'm gonna bring them up close. You can see how like dolphin-like those leaves could be right there. Really nice and beautiful. And this thing's actually stretched out quite a bit since I've had it. But I'm gonna go ahead and set that here. I got another one right here, just as full, if not fuller. Really gorgeous ones. And I'm going to have that one out right here. But like I said, I'm going with an 8-inch container. 8-inch being because I have 2 plants that are going into one. Not typically do you want to put 2 plants together in one thing unless it's more of a gift or some kind of arrangement planter, but you have plenty of soil. But here I am essentially bulking out the plant, making it a bigger planter together. So I'm going to go ahead, nice couple handfuls there. Okay, go ahead and be very careful not to break our dolphins. Alrighty, and I can imagine there's many of us that have worked with our Synesias, our string of pearls and fish hooks, if you will, and have broken a considerable amount of them while trying to transplant. So that's what we're trying to avoid today. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little tilt, a little jiggle. Perfect. Those roots are super fine. Let's see, we're gonna go ahead and give that a little scrunch down there. And I particularly love the way that this grower does string of dolphins because of how nice and malleable the root ball is. So all I'm doing is giving it a little scrunch just so it sits more nice and tidy in the pot there. And I'm gonna go ahead and scooch it over this way and grab my next one. This is my second pot here. And just like that, 45-degree angle, gentle massage just to get that going, and then we're just gonna start jiggling. There we go, perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this aside, and we're gonna go ahead and put it in here. There we are. I don't know if anyone else has ever noticed, but when you're handling Senecios, they always have this smell of like, I think of it like a piney kind of smell, but other people say otherwise, but yeah, that's what it smells like to me. Okay, so that is them just set into the pot right now. Next off, I tried to minimize the amount of rotating of the pot in this situation, just because little splinter there. Wear your gloves, everybody. But while I don't listen to myself. Alrighty. We're trying to reduce rotating on those pots because we don't want the Senecio to get crushed by the pot inadvertently, and then we have to wait all that time for it to grow back. And so I like to work on the two sides that have developed here, these two little pockets. So I've gone ahead and filled up that side. Look at that fillage, everybody. Isn't that just gorgeous? I wish I had one of those head planters that you could put it onto, and then it looks like someone's hair. Okay, so we're gonna set that right down. Okay, and I'm just pulling back here on the strands. There, nice little tuck. Okay, and I would say, like, of everything here, I tried to make sure I had a nice mixture of things, just so that we see how differently we handle all of them. But this is one of your more delicate items. Like, you don't want to really manhandle this. You want to be really ginger about it. And there you go. That's, you know, string of dolphins. Now, this is definitely not done. What I do next is, it's now potted. I'm gonna go ahead and start rearranging some of these strands. As it's been growing, it's been pretty free-spirited in how it wants to grow. But this is when I need to start letting it grow a certain way for my look for my hanging basket. So let's see here. Start laying out the strands, disassembling any tangles or overlaps. That and that. Okay. Perfect. That's looking great. And actually on this pot here, it'll have a couple of notches that this strap is supposed to go into. And so I'm just keeping that in mind here. I'll keep my strap over here. And so this particular hanger strap has 3 sections. And so I'm gonna make sure that each section gets an equal amount of dolphin material. You can see that I've been arranging them into thirds here. And that is because my straps are located in these 3 different sections here. So 1, 2, and then there's one in the back. So this little cord here, we'll attach that nice strong right there. One in the back right here. Okay, and then we'll get this one right here. Perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and lift it up. Fingers crossed. Hold your breath, everybody. But there we go. Okay, guys. So we're working on the last plant now, and that is gonna be the variegated Monstera. I'm gonna go ahead and put my soil here into my 5-gallon pot. I'm upsizing from an 8-inch pot out to a 5-gallon, just because we're starting to go into the dormant season, and I want to make sure this plant can maintain a lot of moisture. And so, let's see. Monstera is not a moisture picky type of plant. It's definitely not any drought tolerant. You know, it is one of your normal tropical class type of plants, but considering it's Thai Constellation, I'm not taking any risks. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull back here, just maybe 3 handfuls. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and stage it in here. That's probably way too high, so we're gonna go ahead and take another probably 1 or 2 out of here. All right, we're looking good. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab the plant here. I handle it by the crown and the stake that it's on. Now be very careful with it, especially you'll know your plant better than I will. So make sure that your stake is on nice and sturdy. Okay, just drop that. Okay, but you can see roots are really developed. This thing definitely needs a new home. So I'm gonna go ahead and set that right smack dab in the middle where the imprint was before. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and start backfilling. Okay, and I'll tend to fray out this edge here because a lot of that new growth is on that corner, this top corner spot there. So fray that out. Go ahead and repot. Put that soil around the back. All right, and when you guys are, if you guys are curious about the moss pole and how I made it, I can definitely do a video on that. Just let me know. But the moss pole was fairly easy. Each pole took me about 45 seconds, and that's just with good preparation and a nice system to work with. Okay, so we are almost done here. I'm gonna go ahead and brush the soil back from the original spot here. Fill in the back here, it's looking a little low. Okay, and I know people say leave an inch at the top or whatever. I like to leave more of a ½ inch just because that will stop me from overwatering too much. And plus, when I fill it up this high, there's just more volume for my plants to root into. But I turn this baby around. Look at that, isn't that just precious? I went ahead and repotted that here. We are now officially in the 5-gallon size for this baby, and I thank you so much for watching the video today. Please make sure to subscribe. And if you have any questions or you want to ask about anything, just leave a comment below, and I'd be very happy to answer it on the next video. We can do even a Q&A if you would like to. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.